relativity does not yield clearly that general get into all that, but specific with that, it doesn't necessarily fields or a medium that it's moving. Okay.
There's nothing to do in here.
Here we have
There's nothing else to do.
Magnetic force. So the Coriolis, right?
Like
so the radially inward force that's being assumed, the inertial force that's accounted for, that using Newtonian mechanics, you could just treat it like a Lorentz magnetic force for the mathematical purposes. It might be called the gravitational magnetic field generated by the pretty interesting.
Tropical Florida.
And I would say this is flirting with an accurate model. Not quite though, because Newtonian mechanics drops the ball, but the point is that you're getting in the right direction if you acknowledge that, well, it's a torus field, everything within it is going to be contributing to the magnetic field, the spatial extension that is the magnetic field, but we'll get to that. Here he points out the flattened vigor of the Earth, assumed as a globularist, of course, or Foucault's pendulum can no longer be utilized as proofs of the Earth's real rotation. Dun dun dun. This is not just some random guy. This is a physics professor. He shows you all the math and the physics and explains you can't claim that if a pendulum moves around that it's the Earth spinning, because we've just shown very clearly if you account for everything in the universe, you would have a dynamic equivalence. Here we also have Dr. Luca Papi of Newtonian Machian analysis of the Neo-Tychonian model for planetary motions, published by the European Journal of Physics in 2013. In his conclusion, he explains there's another interesting remark that follows from this analysis. If one could put the whole universe in accelerated motion around the Earth, the pseudo-potential corresponding to pseudo-force will immediately be generated. That same pseudo-potential then causes the universe to stay in that very state of motion without any need for exterior forces acting upon it. Now what's funny is that all of a sudden, Earthers get how pseudo is kind of sus. Wait, it says pseudo force. Wait, isn't that funny? Keep that same energy in a few seconds. So this is a Neo-Tychonian model. I don't even care about that at all. It is interesting to show that he shows a dynamic equivalence. He actually tried to publish a follow-up paper. He kind of softballed this one, and he published a follow-up that just dunks on heliocentrism. And that's when they put together he was actually a geocentrist, as opposed to just showing the dynamic equivalence, and they refused to publish it. That's real science. But all the math and physics couldn't be rebutted. So anyway, Steven Weinberg, here he says, if we were to adopt a frame of reference like Tycho's, in which the Earth is at rest, then the distant galaxies would seem to be executing circular turns once a year, and in general relativity, this enormous motion would create forces akin to gravitation, which would act on the sun and planets and give them the motions of the Tychonic theory. It's just geocentric. Newton seems to have had a hint of this in an unpublished Proposition 43 that did not make it into Principia. Newton acknowledged that Tycho's theory could be true if some other force besides ordinary gravitation acted on the sun and planets. Now, of course, disclaimer.
We're cooking.
The masses of the sun or planets or distances or the masses or distances of galaxies. Not the point. The point is that there is a dynamic equivalence indisputably. The kinematic equivalence is still disputed by some people in this circle, but that's laughably irrelevant in the real world. You'll never find someone with any degrees in any of these subjects that would ever dispute the kinematic equivalence, and you should understand that simply.
Yeah! Drink that up. Drink that up. Work everything.
So, we're talking about
I can't live in 2 square feet anymore.
This is next level.
Cannot do it.
Even Newton knew that.
This is all my mother's fault.
Okay.
This is all Patricia Marie's fault.
What do they use when they put these satellites up?
Nobody can live in a van.
An Earth-centered, Earth-fixed coordinate system.
It's unsustainable.
Newtonian mechanics. And they account for real inertial forces. And even if you used Einsteinian, which they do not, then you still are having real inertial forces because of the kinematic.
You can't live in 2 square feet for your whole life.
here we have the proposition that was unpublished, conveniently enough, the last thing he wrote. So the context is he wrote the whole Principia, and then the thing that he thought was important to add at the very end of everything he wrote was, well, with all that being said, in order for the Earth to be at rest in the center of the system of the Sun, planets and comets, there's required both universal gravity and another force in addition that acts on all bodies equally according to the quantity of matter in each of them, and is equal and opposite to the accelerative gravity with which the Earth tends to the Sun. And thus celestial bodies can move around the Earth at rest as in the Tychonic system. And this is not even accounting for additional masses outside of the local solar system, as he assumed the Sun was in the center of the universe. So if you're following, even if you were to go all the way back to the time of Newton, he says if there's an equal and opposite reaction going on, which is how physics works, by the way, it's called pressure mediation, and all things abide by that. There are no exceptions, and there never will be, except in this model, people think that gravity is an exception. The point is that he's saying with the equal and opposite reaction, the Earth could be in the center. Now, when you take away the assumption that the Sun's in the center of the whole universe, it's an immediate dynamic equivalence, even without the equal and opposite reaction. So hopefully you guys are following, because I'm making a meta about the actual dynamic implications of the GPS satellites, and then we're going to open it up. We're going to get into more of the specifics about the GPS signals themselves. All right. So here we go. Now these are all well-revered people that are notorious for having the most thorough understanding of relativity, and that should always have an asterisk beside it, because relativity is intrinsically not understandable. It is paradoxical. But anyway, we don't necessarily have to read this whole part, but again, he points out here, for example, if we consider a purely mechanical system consisting of a number of material particles acted upon by given forces, and with the velocity small compared with the velocity of light relative to a system of inertia, Newton's fundamental equations of mechanics may be applied with good approximation in the description of this system. On the other hand, if we wish to describe the system in an accelerated system of reference, we must introduce, as is well known, so-called fictitious forces, centrifugal forces, Coriolis forces, etc., which have no connection whatever with the physical properties in the mechanical system itself. In fact, they depend exclusively on the acceleration of the system of reference introduced relative to the systems of inertia. Now, it's important to note that within this heliocentric paradigm, you have to call these pseudo forces. And that meaning that there's no truly known source, and they're strictly like illusory. They're effectively illusory relative to reference frame. Okay.
Alright, I'm gonna get the Coontrash. I just gotta get more money.
Here's the important part. It should break it down for everyone. So here's the depiction of the Newtonian system. And so you have the Earth is going to continue in a straight path, right? Mass seeks to move in a straight line at the velocity of the momentum, so that P equals mv. Right? So momentum equals mass times velocity. So the Earth is going to continue in a straight path. Unless what? What does Newtonian mechanics say? The object will continue in a straight path unless an outside force acts upon it. So now, let's get some outside forces. What do we have? We have centripetal forces. So we have centripetal forces by gravity.
My brother's girlfriend. My brother's girlfriend wants me playing video games.
The centripetal effect. Centripetal plus
it's only a matter of time before you go down.
Okay, now this is assuming helios.
Reap what you sow, ladies. Big face.
Now this is also what they're using for their satellites. It's very important to understand this. If you put satellites in the sky and you're using real inertial forces in your physics and equations, you're using Newtonian mechanics. Yeah, you can do the math different ways. You can use an ECF. Oh, let's magically transform it to an ECI, which could never work. It's just a mathematical transform. Let's just completely ignore that it's not the solar barycentric coordinate system that we claim to be true, because sure, that one's just more complicated. Sure, we're from the Earth, it's all in relation to the Earth, and we can get all the math to come down to the same numbers. That is not what this is about.
I'm a box Lamborghini.
Getting this final mathematical solution to be synonymous does not mean anything. And I'm going to go on full camera here, because this seems to be a concept that get people to land with. Alright. If I have 3 theories, and I can work all the theories out and get the same mathematical solution, but the 3 theories make completely opposite claims. Would all 3 of the solutions being the same mean that all 3 theories are true? If I get the same solution in 3 theories, mathematically, could all 3 theories be actually true in reality if they make
This is like Clearwater Beach.
Physics? Of course not. The fact that you can use many methods to get to the same mathematical solution means nothing. We're talking about physical reality, physics, mechanics, dynamics, reality. It's important to understand. Word salad.
Word salad.
Someone said this was word salad.
Oh,
alright.
that'll work.
Very important. And dude, I'm gonna say, if you're coping to the extent that like you can't accept
major coping.
So anyway, the point is that this is what they're using for the path, right? It's like a curved path. It's an ellipse over a plane. No big deal. Coordinate system transform means nothing. Let's talk about the physics, the equations, right? The mechanics of the satellites. If this satellite's going, we're using the Earth. Let's say the Earth's the satellite, the Sun is the Earth, right? If you put this satellite supposedly in space or wherever, and it's about to go around the Earth, like the Earth's going around the Sun, what do you need if you're using Newtonian mechanics? You need forces to prevent it from continuing on its straight path
cooking's hot.
due to inertia.
We're cooking like you real human beings.
Okay. So it's very important to understand that this graphic right here should pull it all together for you guys. You get centripetal and centrifugal forces. And again, what happens? What happens if you flip it over with the dynamic equivalent of the Earth being stationary, which what do the satellites use?
Great, just what we needed.
I hate this girl.
The messages. It's not her, is it?
We're stationary. If we treat the Earth as stationary, which we are, right? Then you're going to get angular momentum of the cosmos.
Guess you don't want your car back.
Look at her face.
And this is going to result in centrifugal
Guess right,
forces.
Torres.
So
Torres
Yeah,
Hernandez.
that is, right?
You know all about the shit you be doing around
On the
here.
end of the string, it starts spinning
You
around.
can play us?
It's a tendency for that ball to go out away from the center of rotation.
He was my lawyer, Hernandez.
Bad move.
Should be named Torres.
Stop to think who that money belonged to?
Should have 3 last names.
Someone has a right now.
Both of these things exist.
Who? We're not listening to
People
her.
do
Frank
mental
Mercer.
gymnastics to try to act
He wants you found and dealt with.
One does, one doesn't, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is that they do.
I want to pick someone that's public next time.
Effect in physics.
You think I'm here for that?
Centrifugal force also is.
I never wanted any of
What
this.
happens if you have
It's gone too far. He's gone too far.
Earth-fixed coordinate system?
He needs to be stopped.
Is you would have
She's a pig.
twice the magnitude of the
I file a report and then what?
and that would be a
You don't think he has cops watching his back?
Model,
There's no move I can make from the inside, but you, he won't see that coming.
real actual force
Look,
in relation to absolute
we're
space,
sorry your boss is being a total asshole,
right? And
but I think
even
we'll
if
take our
space
chances.
has motion
Thank
within it,
you.
if the
How about your brother?
background
Do you feel the same?
can be,
Whoa, hey, he's got nothing to do with
and of course,
this.
the
Nothing.
thing that we truly use is the lab frame. So if you have a stationary lab frame, that's going to be your
This
absolute
isn't going
frame
away.
to measure
Understand?
against, and then you could have a
And I can only throw him off for so long, so you're gonna need to act and act fast.
So
That's your only
the
option.
point is that you're going to have the Coriolis be twice the magnitude of the centrifugal force.
I'm the
Right
black
now?
guy.
Does that
Get the hell away from each other.
have a net
I'll send you a location.
centripetal force?
Why? What for?
They're moving stuff.
It's word salad when I say
Follow it, you'll
centripetal
see.
divergence or centripetal
The rest is up to you.
convergence. Well, those are just different descriptions of the same phenomena. Centripetal.
Oh, I saw the black
is
man.
converging in, going in towards the center. Centrifugal converges out from the center. So
Flip
you're
my,
going to
I gotta flip my
have twice
food.
the magnitude of the centripetal force. So that is a radial inward accelerative force. It's a
Wow.
real force, and therefore it can keep you perpetually moving around the center of rotational axis.
Don't worry, Cooks.
Now, we'll cover this
It smells like plastic.
I knew I'd get worse
Plastic.
allegations. It's just because it's just
Plastic
a step
cooks.
up a little. We had to go up a little level here for the stream, but
Why does it smell like plastic? Plastic.
so again, when we look at this, Newton knew it himself. Right, Newton
Plastic.
himself acknowledged this. It's important to understand, and I'll conclude in a second. Now, here's another ironic part of all of this is even with this is W.G.B. Rosser, an introduction to the theory of relativity, again, well known to be considered one of like the utmost experts in terms of relativity. And here he is explaining that there's actually a misnomer. And the only reason this is in here
Misnomers.
from the presentation back in the day was to show actually you even have to
Are you gonna go over here,
dynamic
I guess?
equivalence with relativity in every way.
This one over here?
Speed of light. Because it actually says if gravitational fields are present.
Okay, I just got my message. Looks like this place is by the port. Meet you there when you're ready.
Where are you going?
I want to find out anything I can on Taurus. We need to know what deal with you.
Torres Hernandez. Mexicanas. Steam.
Pretty interesting.
Let's get some. We gotta get the Ferrari. Oh, the Lamborghini.
Mind-destroying
This race.
nonsense that is relativity.
Just on the way there. Trust fund kid. Tasha Thielen, a trust fund kid.
To concede that everything can move around the Earth. So now, this is the point I really want to drive home here, just to wrap everything up. They say satellites are going around Earth. They use Newtonian
Satellites.
and they use an Earth-centric Earth fixed coordinate system. So what they do in their physics and equations, or they account for, and I know it's like the fifth time I've said it.
We're gonna get a Ferrari. We're gonna get a Ferrari.
Forces, which is one of the not as dominant forces here, right? And then they account for centrifugal forces.
Junk. Solid junk. Ferraris are junk.
The Coriolis force is twice the magnitude. So it seems the Coriolis acceleration not only cancels the centrifugal acceleration, but together they provide a net centripetal radially inward component of acceleration that is directed toward the center of rotation. Okay, so this is going to effectively give you, if you have a stationary Earth with the cosmos moving around it, right, you would just get angular momentum that was basically pushing you in towards the center of rotation and would just keep you going perpetually. That's what it would do. The satellite actually use the equations and physics of that system. So basically what's going on is they throw us, if this is real and we grant the satellite, they're putting a satellite up as if the Earth is stationary and the universe is spinning around it, creating a force, generating forces, and the net force actually would keep it moving perpetually around the Earth. And they account for, and we'll get more into this when I open it up, they account for a change in velocity. They account for a curved path. You have a problem. Einstein said that you're not in a curved path. You don't have a change in velocity. And so there are many other problems, but I want to focus on the meta of the actual orbital mechanics itself. It's very ironic. And then I'll close it off with this quote. I'll have to find him. But this guy sums it up pretty nicely.
Oh, friggin' YouTube, it gives you 2,000 viewers one time and 1 viewer next
I
time.
think that this is going to be an information exchange, to be honest. It's crazy.
Yeah, algorithm. Fuck you up.
Here we go.
Oh.
So here it is, Release. Let me...
I fucked up. I fucked up real bad.
Quick here. Oh, where's that? This is quote now. Alright. Hope you guys can see that. Okay.
There's nobody near me.
So he says, yeah, you guys can see it. Again, once more for the record, it has been shown at least 6 different ways this century alone that the equations and physics used by NASA to launch satellites are identical to the equations derived from a geocentric universe.
Oh.
Thus, if the space program is proof of anything. And that's a big if. It's proof of them. It's proof of fakery and deception. Thus, if the space program is proof of anything, it proves geocentricity and disproves heliocentrism. The evidence for heliocentrism is even weaker than the evidence for evolution. PhD astronomer Gerardus Bow. What is so interesting is that what he's saying is again, the physics and equations used to launch satellites assume a geocentric universe where the Earth is stationary and fixed in the center of that universe. Hence geocentric, and the universe moves around the Earth, generating forces that keep the satellites moving around the Earth. So if you assumed all that, put it up there successfully, well, that would be positive physical evidence for that actual assumption that you utilize for practical use. So we're going to get more into how that assumption doesn't even work within heliocentrism, which means if those satellites are up there, it is proof that the Earth is not moving. We're going to get much more into it. It cannot be true, and of course without relativity, we've covered a million different ways. If you don't have relativity, you don't have heliocentrism. So we'll get into those specifics. I'm going to open it up, and I know I got genuine questions at me. If you're just trolling, I'm going to ignore you. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy that. It wasn't too confusing. It's pretty simple, right? I said it a few different ways, but if the GPS satellites are proof of anything, they're assuming the Earth's not moving, that the universe is moving around it, and that they're actually accounting for those forces that a spinning universe would generate. Pretty interesting. Now, I would tell you, well, we've actually measured the drift within the background medium, and so if something spinning in a vortex or spinning around is going to generate angular momentum, it has to do that, right? And so it makes perfect sense to me, actually, that you could throw something up and you have no physical impedance of air or much less air, right? And you throw something up, well, you're going to get angular momentum of the cosmos moving around you. The closer you get to the sky, the more you're going to feel the impact of that force. So, cool. I'm going to... Yeah, so we'll go ahead and open it up, and then just a quick reminder, if you want to support the stream, links in the description will also be up on the screen. It's kofi.com/witsit. Your question or donation will pop up on the screen. 456 watching, 170 likes. Yeah, actually, I'm just going to stare in the camera awkwardly until you like it. Just smash the like button. I can sit there all day. Okay, do it or don't. Word salad is literally the only defense they have. So freaking sad. I know.
Word salad.
Actually, we were talking about it. You should just take that as a complete dub. You should just immediately take it as a victory. It's awesome. It's awesome that they said that. All right. Okay, the closest thing they can say was word salad is when I say that you have a radially inward accelerative force. It's like, if you want to rearrange the words, if that makes you feel better, it's radially inward. It's an accelerative force. So
steady inward
means something. All right, cool. So let's open it up. I think what is going to happen is, I'm wanting my boys to bring up some more of the other parts of topics, maybe they can share screen as well, as they've been really deep diving into GPS. If you don't know, you should definitely be checking them out. Very good work there, and it is the Emperor with No Clothes. GPS claimed to prove relativity, and if relativity wasn't true, we couldn't even use GPS. And GPS proves the Earth's a globe, and that it's spinning, and that it's orbiting, and that relativity is true. And all of those things are patently false. So we'll get into more of the specifics as we go. Since you're hidden by YouTube,
you get like 2,000, 3,000 people, then you get no people.
Alright, cool. We're going to go ahead and open it up again.
YouTube.
In the description if you want to join the Discord.
No one likes Need for Speed.
And if you disagree, then we'll pop you up. You raise your hand, you get brought up.
YouTube doesn't like Need for Speed.
Before they do that. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to cover that part of it. Which of course is not the mechanics themselves falsifying heliocentrism. Alright, cool. Do you guys have any thoughts about that?
Cool.
Relativity proves GPS, and GPS couldn't work without relativity. It's great rhetoric because, on the surface level, you can just say that, and things are, allegedly falling in the sky. So you can just kind of safely assume. Oops, sorry, I think it's a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So you can just, safely assume that because you have the access to these services of GPS and all that, therefore the correctness of relativity must be true. We need not look any further, right? Well, let's see, where should we start here? Look, clock corrections, the overall system, relative simultaneity. It's like, where do we begin with how relativity doesn't work with this system at all? And classical mechanics completely explained it. Up until 1995, they didn't even have any relativistic transformations in the entire system, right? And then to this day, right, so what they say is, well, the instrumentation at the time was sensitive enough to detect the small differences that general special relativity would make. So they actually cancel out either the sensitivity, air, threshold, or current instruments. So we don't need to worry about implementing any different transformations or anything like that. We're just running off the classical mechanics.
The government don't let you live off the grid.
They have more advanced instrumentation now, and they say that due to the scaling of that, their instruments are more sensitive, so that's where they're going to have to start accounting for these relativistic effects, right? So this is where the retardation that's happening with clock synchronization, that's happening with the signal propagation that we're sending to ground receivers, right? There's so the retardation that's happening within that it's more accurate. Right? So to explain the ratio of how small this is getting, they say, okay, well now it's a relativistic correction. So at this point, the classical effects are stopped, and now this is due to gravitational field. This specific amount of retardation is due to the gravitational potential of the geode, right? And then due to XYZ velocity. Now this correction is right? It completely, velocity. Due to velocity, now time is different. Right now there's a time displacement with what's causing retardation. Well, apparent retardation. So really just depends on your reference frame on that, if it's apparent or physical or not. But in any case, it's the same effects, right, that we're working in the classical system, but just more sensitive now, and they have newly proposed mechanisms for the quote unquote cause of it, right? So all the math that existed in the system before, where it canceled out, so therefore it wasn't relevant or whatever, right? But now they say, well, in terms of keeping the clocks in sync and using the signal to derive distances, right? So that's not even touching on the dynamic aspect of it, which we'll get into. But that was just kind of a segue of how the rhetoric around relativity proves GPS. GPS couldn't work without it. It's literally the opposite. When you look into how they built the system, right? It was basically trial and error. They assumed Einstein clock synchronization would work. That didn't work. They had to go back to classical mechanics. So it's just a really interesting story when you know the history.
Somebody asked me if I need help.
And it's completely different than when you go to Wikipedia.
I appreciate your concern.
That relativity
I need help.
GPS.
Yeah, isn't it crazy, man? Like, I mean, like, you go through
Such
the
good
list
people
of
on
things,
PlayStation
and
Network.
Of course, any of you guys.
Such good kids.
Until I stopped. Like, Alan really broke that down, and if you're unfamiliar with concepts and stuff like that, like we're happy to discuss it. But if you go through the list of things, it's so much. And it's funny because, like, from the rip, and that's all I covered, was the orbital mechanics. Right? Like, just the actual orbital mechanics themselves, see? Like, it refutes heliocentrism if it's true. If they're up there doing that, it refutes heliocentrism. And
happens in this chamber, we'll go over quickly. So to kind of, instead of thinking about this in the way that they try and teach it,
some guys asking if I need help in here.
Electrons and all that, right? Just kind of think of it in basic terms. So
I think there's a supportive PlayStation community.
Frequency related, so it's going to be related to
my dinner over here.
Jody,
making supper.
Right? So we have
Supper time.
Here.
Supper time.
It gets excited and it oscillates, right? So it's vibrating at 9,192,000,000 oscillations a second. So they start heating up cesium. This is a vacuum chamber here, right? So they have cesium, they break the cesium in its oven, and then they start heating it up, and then the excited cesium gets funneled out through a collimator, basically just, you know, finally focusing out the gas vapor, and then that hits a magnetic field. Any
people want to play.
Not
I can't play online, so I don't have enough internet connection.
192 gigahertz. It'll bounce it out. The oscillation rate that matches will pass through and enter the radio wave, what do they call it? The radio microwave chamber. Into an electric signal. This quote-unquote electron multiplier is just like bouncing an electric signal back and forth with these meters.
Fried egg cheese sandwich. Jody's a real ham and egger. You're fucking ham and egger. Jody!
To an oscillation rate of 9,192,000,000.
Ah! Jody, I just burned myself with fucking grease, sausage grease. We're done.
In the radio wave chamber. So that it keeps.
I gotta follow this bitch.
Right. So the way that Einstein clock synchronization.
I want real internet, so I can play with people. Do fun shit. Do you want to be friends with PlayStation? Yes, I do want to be. I want to be friends. I want to be your friend.
Of the full process.
I'll be your friend if you're watching me.
The theory is once they get synchronized,
we're gonna be friends. We're gonna be best friends.
Falling around the Earth in a local inertial frame, because the speed of light is constant. It's not because the clock should maintain its oscillation.
Bang, bang, bang.
It should not experience any retardation in the oscillation.
Right, ham and egger. There we go.
So what they found actually is that the oscillation rate returns the oscillation to the clock. So if we recall back to the proton in space, then it was an inertial frame, it's a geodesic.
Look at the comments. Right on the grass.
We're in space. Those people get to see we have no way to call. Well, it turns out
oh no, there ain't no way. I need better tires. That's why look at these tires are killing me.
Send additional energy into this radio to keep the oscillation rate because that's what this whole process is about.
I'm not seeing anything special yet.
These off-road racers are stupid. They're totally stupid. This is fucking dumb.
That's actually not a true path, right? Because every path is geographic and not a space. So there's actually a different view.
It's burning the tires off.
The ocean actually experiencing, you know, relativity is distributed in case. So if you actually were to look at
now hook up.
Look at that rotor from another plane, Mars for example. You wouldn't see the elliptical path, you would see it being what's called a...
I don't want to impress you. I think you're a piece of shit.
Which would have different acceleration and deceleration to the grid. So what that means is that the clock acceleration would be different, it would correspond to the duality version of relativity, where everything's in a geodesic and there's an actual different reference point, there's an infrastructure outside of it as well, right? But that's not the case at all. It comes proportionally to a geocentric position. Right, exactly as we said. So it's extremely damning for relativity theory because this is not the theory of
This is dumb.
that they couldn't set in the motion when they were trying to measure the orbiting of the sun, but that's kind of outside of the scope of this presentation. All very related.
Finish strong or it's over.
Nice.
It's over. This shit's over.
This stuff, just ask in the chat. So atomic clocks was just hilarious because that's what they claim proves it.
Yeah, so atomic clocks in and of itself, they say, are successful proof of relativity theory. Real quick, if we can diverge to one of the clock synchronization experiments that led to actually the confirmation of relativity theory, the boy Chaplin G, right? We remember when they took 4 atomic clocks around the equator of the airplane, and then eastward and then westward, right? So the clocks
So what? I just say maritime.
Relativity theory in regards to how the clocks would respond to the equal gravitational potential of which you are. Sorry, I could really get to say that.
Let's make sure everyone knows this is that people will claim that GPS proves relativity and that the atomic clocks have to account for time dilation. And without the relativistic correction,
teach me what to
we won't
do.
be able to use it. And that proves that relativity is correct. And they point to this quote-unquote experiment, this measurement that supposedly happened, where they put clocks on planes that went different directions. They flew at different altitudes in different directions, and they were supposed to show different time dilation rates based on relativity's predictions. And continue.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that was the,
Look at
that
this
was the
slop,
experiment. So they
Joni.
had the
You're
clocks,
still
they had
here.
the relativistic prediction on how
Look at
much
the
the
slop.
clocks would retard or gain speed proportional to the gravitational potential.
Tall as hell.
Right, and the results of the experiment were published in 1971. Well, they weren't really published in 1971. They were documented in 1971 and then later FOIA'd by a man named A.G. Kelly. Who was looking into the matter. But anyway, this entire experiment was funded by the Navy. So they were doing a debriefing afterwards, and this is from Heffel going on or talking about the experiment and what happened during it, right? Because during the experiment, the clocks came out of predicted desynchronization and synchronization, plus or minus, right? So gaining or losing time. It varied so much outside of the experimental threshold that they had to adjust the clocks manually. They did this, I forget the amount of times, but just the fact that it happened once is kind of game over, right? But they had to make like 7 adjustments or something like that to reset these things. But anyway, they say here, the result of the analysis are in reasonable agreement with the theoretical predictions. However, those who doubt the validity of the conventional relativity theory, and there are many people in this category will probably not be converted by the results shown in Figure 4. Indeed, the difference between theory and measurement in Figure 4 is disturbing, and our final analysis does not improve the agreement of the improved version, and this experiment should be given serious consideration. Or an improved version, right? So what they did was the predicted values are here in this slide, right? So we're supposed to lose 43 nanoseconds plus or minus 23 nanoseconds going eastward, and then we're supposed to gain 275 nanoseconds plus or minus 21 on the westward trip for the relativity theory. Now the measurements on the first round, not including the clock resets to keep it in line, were not even close. And then in 1972, they published their paper, or they published their findings as proof of relativity, giving good agreement with clock synchronization, with their corrected results, and they never published like what they did for their corrections or anything like that. They just, you can get the paper and read it yourself. But anyway, a man named A.G. Kelly, like I said, physicist from Ireland, FOIA'd this whole thing, right? So this is from the debrief from that when they got back from the plane.
Trashco County Sheriff.
So atomic clocks did not, in 1972, prove relativity theory. Give potential evidence that couldn't be explained for anyone. That doesn't make sense. Alright, so that's atomic clocks. Was there anything else we need to do?
I mean, I guess there's another question, right? Someone say something?
Yeah, I was going to be able to very How come I just can't Lorenz correct and apply good corrections wherever I am?
Yeah.
Wilbur's aren't even saying anything like that. Let's be real.
I mean, dog said exactly that.
Oh, really?
That they can't do that. Nice. All right. So let's see here. Okay, we can cover the principle of relative simultaneity, right? So we were kind of talking meta arguments in terms of the dynamics of the solar systems and the motion of things in the sky in relation to things that are moving on Earth. And another meta argument against relativity theory and GPS, right? As we were talking about earlier, how the rhetoric around GPS is that relativity or GPS wouldn't work unless relativity was correct, right? So we're going to read about relative simultaneity real quick, which is the core fundamental tenet really of relativity theory, because if this doesn't exist, then length contraction and time dilation are not valid explanations for anything, and the justification to even use of Lorentz transformation to say length contraction and time dilation is completely invalidated by this, because from our perspective, right, we experience length contraction and time dilation are explained to us as physical mechanisms, right? But they'll actually argue that they're apparent due to relative simultaneity and etc. Right? So we're going to read a little bit about that here as soon as I can transition to the right slide and the relevance of that in GPS. So, all right, so I'm going to close this out and we're going to do it from the paper.
Try backing up. Go the way we came.
1 second. Sorry about that.
You're good, brother. Dude, I'm just thinking, like, we can create a totally functional model for all the dynamics in the sky, like, because the center of a magnetic field is the null pressure point. It's like the pure potential. That would be the thing that you have, basically triple divergence, triple convergence, like that. I'm just gonna say it where people that are not just trying to dismiss it can understand it. Who cares? You have some triple divergence, triple convergence, like superimposed, right? You have the conjugate geometry that's centered on the center of the Earth. You're gonna start getting the effects of the motion as you get out there. You'll even start getting counter rotation effects, and then everything moving around that would have such an immense angular momentum. It would basically press in towards that null pressure point, and it would just keep everything moving around it forever. Meaning, like, literally the center of the Earth, right, is the center of the surface of the Earth would be the center of the entire universe's torso. Alright.
Oh, that's an awesome thought, man. We're definitely going to have to make a cool model of that.
How dare you provide an actual dynamic explanation for things?
For the whole universe, yeah. Who needs that?
We need to be
Can we
quiet.
have a model piece like we do and then have hold everything?
Alright, so we're going to quickly go over global simultaneity and the relative simultaneity. So this is from a paper in 2000 by Ruyang Wang. Shout out to Wang. So we'll read here what he has to say about it. In any debate about the speed of light, the problem of simultaneity is always a focus. Special relativity claims that relativity of simultaneity, which states that two events occurring at two different places, which are viewed as simultaneous for an observer in a system, usually will not be simultaneous if viewed from
Try backing up. Go the way we came.
viewed from an observer in another system. But
So sick of this bitch.
But contrary to this, simultaneity is key to GPS operations. Oh no, the thing that would not make it true is key to it. Let's keep forgetting. GPS is a timing ranging system. It does not directly measure distance between two places where two events, i.e. signal transmitting and signal receiving, occur. It measures the difference in the instance when these two events happen, and the distance is calculated using the range measurement equation. GPS, especially its space segment and control segment, make a huge effort to establish and maintain a GPS time, or simply GPS system time, or simply GPS time. In a scope where GPS is applied, roughly a scope of a diameter of 50,000 kilometers or bigger, if one is using GPS, one is using GPS time, and therefore the concept of simultaneity of GPS. So just regular simultaneity. If two events happen at two different places, and the coordinate system for event number 1 is given, and the coordinate system for event number 2 is given, are simultaneous if the time is equal to the time in the second coordinate system. And this is true no matter who the receiver is, where the receiver is, what its status is, or what speed it is. This is the basic operational principle of GPS. We call it global simultaneity. So they've got a special term here that isn't called relative simultaneity, called global simultaneity. So we'll get back to that in a second here.
You and Lucas speaking yet?
So in the books about special relativity, the most commonly cited example of this principle is that simultaneity is that the example of a railway platform and a moving train. It says that these two events, two strokes of lightning, A and B, which are simultaneous, with the reference to the platform, are not simultaneous with respect to the moving train and vice versa. But now GPS receivers have been utilized extensively on railway platforms and moving trains and lightning at two different places. A and B conceptually is the same as the emission of two GPS signals from a satellite or two GPS signals. The fact that two signals are emitted from two satellites and 2D or 2D GPS at the same GPS time, both of the GPS receiver on the railway and the moving train would acknowledge the two events. The emission signals would be simultaneous without this basic acknowledgement of GPS.
How am I supposed to hit him?
So we have here.
You still sit here, like to those in the chat. Look, there's always going to be these weirdos that are trolling, and I'm very pro free speech. So I'm not spamming. We have it on somewhere that's cool to the mods. Like it's cool, but obviously this information is going to require attention. So I encourage people in the chat to like try to pay attention, with questions about it. The trolls in here that are saying you can't answer anything, you have no answers for anything, like they're just coping. We answer almost everything, right? So like just ignore the trolls and pay attention. And that's just my suggestion. Obviously you also have free speech, so whatever you want. Sorry to pause it, but just saying that I'm about to go refill my drink, but I just wanted to tell the mods, like, leave them alone, but also people like just don't give them energy, because we're ladling gravy. And I would say if you're not familiar with what Alan's talking about, it probably is going to require some attention. So okay, sorry about that, bro. Go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. So the idea here is that relativity, or the principle of relative simultaneity, states that you wouldn't be able to sync multiple events to a single timeline, to a single cohesive timeline, but that's exactly how GPS functions, through GPS time. So everyone gets the signal at the same time, and it all works out with no additional corrections, right? So this is a huge problem, because like I said earlier, this is the proposed mechanism for why time and distances are different, and that's where they get into the contraction as the proposed mechanisms to facilitate why the speed of light should be constant, right, in their model. So we're going to look at this paper here from 1995. This is GPS and Relativity and Engineering Over. Right, so this is the response to, like I was talking about earlier, I didn't have to paper this, I apologize, but this is in response to all the engineers that work in GPS, especially the software engineers that are out there programming things, and they're trying to figure out what corrections they need to make the system accurate, right? And there was actually an initiative after they got the system working pretty good. This is 1995. This paper actually touches on some initiatives that were put forward to increase the accuracy of the system, et cetera, et cetera. Right, so this is what I was talking about earlier, though, when I said that they said, well, special and general relativity basically cancel out. Our instruments aren't sensitive enough. You don't need to worry about the corrections, blah, blah, blah. Right, so we'll skip here. Oop, 1 second. Accidentally deleted a highlight, I think. Never mind. All right, we'll skip here to the gravy at the end regarding relative simultaneity. So we have Carol Alley here, who's chiming in about GPS, has a quick question. Now, a quick note on Carol Alley. This is a person who did a second Heffel-Keating clock experiment, and they actually got Einstein clock synchronization to last for about 14 hours before it completely failed. So shout out to them.